Neither of us were new to the road. Gary and I had been driving cross-country for the better part of the last 6 years. After he retired and I dropped the part-time remote work, we bought this second-hand Ford Transit and spent a small fortune converting it into our own little house on wheels. No frills, no wasted space, just a compact mattress, a portable stove, cabinets, some solar panels, and a built-in fridge. It really was nothing fancy, but it worked. It fit for us. Because really, we weren't out to impress anybody. It was literally just for the road and for each other. That van gave us the freedom we wanted. No more motels, no stiff sheets, no arguments with the front desk staff over early check-in or busted AC units. It was just me and Gary, driving through every stretch of this country, mostly between Utah and Vermont, back and forth with the seasons, spring to fall. We'd zigzag our way to the middle of the country, visit our daughter in Vermont or our nephews in Ohio, Gary's brother's family in Missouri. We'd mark up our old atlases with sticky notes and scribbled margins. We planned every single detail, down to the mileage, the stops, the restaurants, camp-friendly areas, and the gas stations. The kind of obsessive prep only two aging, over-cautiously parents could really perfect. We weren't really thrill seekers either. We didn't park on cliff sides or down abandoned forest trails. We were just stealth campers, like Walmart, Cracker Barrel, churches, industrial parks on the weekend. Quiet corners that we could find, with low visibility. No fire pits or folding chairs. Most people would never even notice us, and we preferred it that way. Over the years, we hit black ice, lost a side mirror to a reckless trucker, even had a raccoon climb through an open skylight once while we were both asleep. But never, not even once, did we feel like our lives were in danger. That was until Vermont, until that one Walmart pit stop, that one godforsaken parking lot in the middle of a town I couldn't even point to on a map right now. I can still see the way the sodium lights didn't reach the corners of the lot. I can still hear the hum of the store's rooftop vents. I can still smell that dust, the metal, the storm coming in. The thing is, we didn't ignore the warning signs, we just didn't see them. We were far too used to the road and overly confident, too trusting even. That night peeled it all away. It started off just like 100 nights before it. We pulled into a town around an hour before sunset. Both of us pretty exhausted from that long stretch that we'd just driven. Somewhere between Dayton and Shroom Lake, I think. We weren't behind schedule, but we wanted to make it to our daughter's place by late afternoon the following day. This meant no long detours looking for the perfect camp spot, no scenic views or national forest cutouts, just somewhere flat and quiet and legal enough to get away with. That Walmart sat just off the highway, one of those older ones with a faded sign and a lot big enough to host a carnival. Strangely enough, that night, it might as well have. The lot was nearly empty when we pulled in. A few scattered cars way out toward the garden center, one big rig hugging the curb near the loading dock, but otherwise, not much else. It was a weird kind of dead quiet. I even remember Gary muttering, "Place looks like it's been evacuated." I laughed, but those words stuck with me. It did feel strange. A store that should have had a lot more traffic, teens hanging around, RVs parked under lights, but there was nothing. Still, we just chalked it up to our good luck. Less foot traffic meant less attention. We parked in the far back corner, behind a row of cart corrals that nobody seemed to use. Gary triple-checked the locks on the side door, then gave the sliding door a hard yank to make sure that it was latched. I grabbed my little canvas bag. He took his list and we walked inside together, hand in hand like always. The air conditioning hit us like a wall. That place was freezing inside, and the fluorescent lights were flickering, Half the ceiling tiles were stained, aisles sparsely stocked. We quickly gathered up what we needed: water jugs, trail mix, those little tuna salad packs that Gary loved, and a couple of those pre-made deli sandwiches for dinner. Personally, I just wanted to be quick tonight, but Gary kept stopping to read labels, check expiration dates, and then complain about the prices. We were in there maybe 30 or 40 minutes max. I still have the receipt. It's time-stamped and everything. 8:24 p.m. When we stepped out, the sky was all black and no stars. The parking lot was even more empty than before. No wind, no birds, just the low mechanical hum of the store and the rumble of that semi's generator. As soon as we stepped out, I had this weird feeling. It crawled up the back of my neck like a cold wire being threaded through my spine. Gary gave my hand a squeeze and then pointed towards the van. Something wasn't right. The driver's side door was now wide open, not cracked, open. I saw the shape of a man half inside, one leg dangling out, both arms buried deep in our drawers and cabinets. My stomach dropped straight through my shoes. "Hey!" Gary shouted, letting go of my hand and taking off across the lot before I could stop him. I froze. My fingers were fumbling in my pocket for my phone. My hands were already shaking so badly I nearly dropped it trying to unlock my screen. The man looked up, startled but not scared. He then stood straight up, our old camping lantern clutched under one of his arms, and Gary's binoculars in the other hand. My laptop case was dangling from a strap around his shoulder. He looked at us like we were the ones trespassing. Gary wasn't really a fighter, but he was 6'3", for God's sakes, and he had that military stubbornness inside his bones. "Drop our things and back away from the van, son," he said. His voice was steady. "You're gonna leave right now." The man just smiled, this stretched, kind of toothy grin that made my breath catch in my throat. His eyes were glassy and unfocused. He looked like somebody who hadn't slept in days. Dirty clothes, thin frame, stringy hair curling at the edges. He didn't even look scared, he looked like he was somewhere else entirely. I finally got 911 on the phone, whispering our location in a panic. "Walmart, east side of the lot. Some guy broke into our van. My husband's confronting him. Please send somebody right now." Gary reached for one of our blankets the man had dropped and the guy lunged forward. They both yelled words that I couldn't really make out, and then they were just grappling right there in the middle of the lot. An old man and a crazy guy, locked up in this desperate little circle of movement. The lantern hit the pavement and shattered, glass skidding underneath the van. The laptop fell next, the man kicking it aside as he shoved Gary hard against the van's front end. And then, almost like a goddamn horror movie, he slammed Gary's head onto the hood. I heard the crack from across the lot, and Gary crumpled. He folded like his strings had been cut, body slumping down to the front bumper, hitting the asphalt with a thud. I screamed, but my voice was already hoarse, legs finally moving on instinct. I stopped halfway when I saw the man again. He climbed into the driver's seat, our driver's seat, and slammed the door shut. Then I heard a click. One by one, the locks thunking into place. He locked himself inside our van. I ran to Gary first, but blood was seeping from his temple, pooling underneath his cheek. He was breathing, thank God, but he wasn't conscious. I pressed my hand to the side of his face and screamed into the phone, telling them that he's bleeding, he's in our van now, the guy is in our van. Inside, the man starts yelling, not at me or anybody, just shouting almost into the void, as if talking to somebody who really wasn't there. "It's mine now. It's mine, you understand? They can't have it. They need it to go back." He slammed his fist on the dashboard over and over. I could hear every word through the windshield. He started tearing at the glove box, grabbing things and tossing them out one by one. Charging cables, maps, sunglasses. Then he threw his head back and screamed this long, tortured howl that brought onlookers out from the store even. I backed away, bringing my phone down to record just in case. Headlights then turned into the lot and I nearly collapsed with relief. 2 police cruisers, lights flashing, tires squealing, felt like a salvation. The cops didn't waste any time. One of them rushed to Gary while the other approached the van, hand on his holster, shouting commands through the cracked driver's side window. The guy inside still didn't flinch. He just kept rocking back and forth in the seat, muttering about orbits and gravity and the council, whatever the hell that meant. He was literally in his own world, deeper than anybody could reach. "They're trapping me in here," he kept saying over and over, eyes darting around the cab. "They made it look like a van, but it's not. It's mine. I'm almost home." I stood there completely numb, arms shaking, Gary's blood on my hand. My husband still hadn't moved. One of the officers kept pressure on the wound while calling out for an ambulance. The other had drawn his sidearm now, shouting, telling the man to get out of the vehicle, exit the vehicle now. The man just screamed in response, and then silence, deafening silence. We all were just breathing and waiting. And then, as quickly as it started, it began again, pure chaos. He lunged across the cab and started punching the passenger side window from inside while trying to smash his way out, even though he could just unlock the door at any time. 2 more units pulled up and then another. I counted 6 cops total yelling over one another. A few of them tried to open the doors, but he jammed them from inside. He'd barricaded himself using our cabinet drawers, the cooler, even wedged the camping stove under the steering wheel. It took them 15 full minutes and a crowbar to get him out. And when he finally did, he came out swinging, biting and clawing, even spitting. It took 4 officers to pin him to the asphalt, one screaming that he'd been bitten. And I still remember the sound of that officer yelling, "He bit me! He bit my arm!" They cuffed him, hogtied him, hauled him off in a cruiser, while the guy laughed like a cartoon villain, blood all across his lips. Thankfully, Gary survived. CT scans came back clean, but they kept him overnight just to be sure. We ended up getting a hotel, first one in years. The bed was stiff and the TV didn't work, and I didn't sleep hardly anyway. The next day, we pressed charges, we did the paperwork, and gave our statements, and added the photos to a file that I keep for emergencies. We still travel, but we don't stealth camp anymore. I did not end up living in my car because I was some washed up addict or a deadbeat loser. I didn't lose everything in a fire or blow it all in Vegas. No, what actually happened to me was quieter and a lot more boring. I lost my job 6 months after COVID hit. The company that I worked for just completely folded, and the severance wasn't enough to keep my apartment. My landlord had given me 30 days, and after that, it was time to couch surf. Then nowhere to surf. The dominoes fell fast after that, but the weird part was I wasn't completely broke, at least not really. I'd paid off my car the year before everything collapsed, and I had about 40 grand in savings, more than most Americans ever get the chance to sit on. Now, I could have burned it up in that year's worth of rent and food and stress, but I didn't. Something about spending it on a place I could barely afford just felt like setting fire to it all. So I did something else. I turned my car into my home. I bought some blackout curtains, swapped out the back seat for a mattress platform, added storage bins, camping gear, a power inverter, and some basic coolers. I found a way to live on $20 a day, less if I was even more careful. Now, I wasn't out there panhandling or digging through dumpsters. I was mobile, I was free. I told myself over and over, this is just temporary, I'll figure something out soon. Maybe I'll land one of those working from home gigs, do something freelance, make a bit on the side while I live lean and travel the country. Honestly, it really wasn't that bad. The first few months were even fun. I parked behind gyms to use their showers. I ate better than I ever did when I was working full time. I even saw a little more of the country. Some meadows in Kansas, cliffs in New Mexico, misty rivers cutting through Colorado. I liked being near town, near people, but when it came time to sleep, I needed to be off the map. Dirt roads, cul-de-sacs, church parking lots after hours, places nobody really thought to look. And that was the trick. Stay close to people, but just out of sight. It really did work for a while, at least until the night behind the strip mall outside of this no-name town in Colorado. That night really wasn't any different than anything before, but it would be the one that changed everything for me moving forward. I drove into town late that afternoon, just passing through, honestly. One of those Colorado towns that didn't have a name that you'd remember, the kind that gets swallowed up by trees and valleys the moment you leave it. Main Street itself was barely even 2 blocks long. A liquor store, diner, closed down movie rental place, vape shop, and a rundown strip mall on the southern edge. That's where I ended up going. I'd hit the grocery store for something cold and cheap, then drove around looking for a place to settle in for the night. Behind that strip mall was perfect. Half the businesses were boarded up, and the few cars up in front told me the rest weren't doing so hot either. I circled behind it and found this little stretch of cracked pavement, tucked against a patch of brush and thin trees. Not woods, technically, just kind of overgrowth. But it was enough for me to hide in from the road. If somebody wasn't looking, they'd definitely never even notice that dark little sedan parked up in the weeds. I parked and killed my engine, then settled into the routine I'd come to know by heart. Locked the doors, pulled the front shades up, checked my surroundings. Nobody. Munched on a sandwich that I'd bought and then scrolled my phone for a bit, plugged into the inverter on top of the battery. Change into some sweats, read a chapter of an old paperback. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Not even highway noise, no dogs barking, not even crickets. And that alone should have tipped me off, but it didn't. I think I fell asleep somewhere around 10, which was nothing new for me. Backseat mattress, pillow under my neck, phone under my thigh just in case of emergency. I awoke to some voices, not shouting or anything, just normal talking. It sounded like 3 or 4 people, maybe teens or 20-somethings, moving across the lot out front. It didn't alarm me at first. A strip mall like that might attract the occasional group of kids looking for somewhere to hang out. Harmless. I lay still, just listening. They moved past without even stopping. So I rolled over, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and closed my eyes again. I don't know how long it was between the voices and what took place next. It could have been 10 minutes, it could have been an hour. All I know was I was jolted awake by an explosion of glass and cold air. The passenger side window, right above my head, blew inward, showering me with tiny shards. It was like somebody had taken a bat to it. My ears were ringing. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I sat up dazed, trying to understand what the hell was going on. Blood was running down the side of my neck where the glass had caught me. And that's when I saw them. Figures who were blurry at first. Silhouettes under the dull moonlight. 4, 5, 6 maybe? All around the car. Not really doing anything at first, just standing there, watching. I couldn't see faces and they weren't talking. They started to move slowly, walking around the car in this strange loose circle. Some laughing, some giggling softly. It didn't sound normal, it sounded off. The kind of laugh when somebody forces out when they've gotten to shock. One of them was dancing, literally dancing, arms flailing in this slow spiral, legs stomping like a toddler throwing a tantrum. The others then followed suit, twirling around the car like some weird, messed up ritual. It was so surreal, I could not process it. "Hey, what the fuck?" I shouted. "Get the hell out of here. I'm armed. I'm calling the cops." Now, I wasn't armed. Not really. I had a pocket knife in my phone, but I shouted it anyway, hoping that it'd scare them off. Nobody reacted though, not even a flinch. Just kept moving around the car in that same strange rhythm. I fumbled for my phone, hands slick with sweat and blood, trying to unlock it. My fingers didn't seem to be working right. I pressed the wrong button, closed the screen twice by accident. Then, that's when the rocking started. They pushed hard on the driver's side, and the car lurched forward. I dropped my phone. Another push, harder. The car tilted enough to make my stomach lurch too. I could feel the tires groaning under the pressure. I scrambled up to the front seat trying to get the keys in the ignition, trying to make the horn go off or start the damn car, do something. I'm babbling now. I'm calling 911, I swear to God I'm calling them. They hit hard again. The passenger tires left the ground, and the whole vehicle felt like it was seconds from tipping onto its side. I screamed, like actually screamed, as loud as I could, pounding the horn with my palm. It blared out, and just like that, it stopped, and silence followed. I blinked as my heart continued to hammer, ears still ringing from the horn. When I looked up, they were just gone. No footsteps, no laughter, not even sounds of anybody running off. Just a lot, empty, dark, and dead still. I sat there frozen for a full minute at least before I finally moved. I didn't turn the engine on. I didn't want to draw any more attention. I just sat there in the darkness with blood drying on my neck and slivers of glass in my clothes, shaking like a leaf. Eventually, I started up the car and drove slowly, headlights off until I got to the main road. Then made my way to the nearest gas station and parked under the brightest light that I could find. I didn't even care if somebody told me to move. I'm not going anywhere. Not that night. I didn't sleep, not a wink. I sat under that buzzing gas station floodlight with a roll of paper towels, with a shop vac that I picked up at a thrift store a month or so back. With a half-empty bottle of rubbing alcohol cleaning every inch of my car. I vacuumed the glass out of my bedding, off the floor mats, out of the tiny crevices between the seats. I cut a piece of cardboard and duct taped it over the busted window, layer after layer until it sealed tight. My hands didn't stop shaking that entire time. Every sound that I heard around me, even if it was the rustle of the leaves, the creak of the gas station sign, would set me on edge. When the sun finally came up, I found an auto glass place 2 towns over and booked an appointment for that afternoon. The guy behind the counter gave me this weird look when I told him my story, like he didn't believe me or maybe he just didn't care. Didn't matter though, I just want it fixed and I paid cash. Now, I thought about calling the police. I really thought hard about it, but what would I say? Hey, some kid scared me in the middle of the night. There's no damage beyond the window, nobody caught, no faces to describe. Even if by some miracle they got arrested, what then? A court date for me? A permanent mark on some stupid teenager's record? Maybe one of them was a dropout with no future. Maybe one was a straight A kid, just trying to impress his dirtbag friends. I don't know, but I didn't really want to be the guy who ruined a life over something dumb like that. Something terrifying, yeah, but dumb. So I just took the L, took the hit. I paid for the repair, ate the loss, and moved on. But that night definitely changed me. I stopped traveling as much after that. I picked up a temp job online and saved what I could and put in for an apartment 3 months later. It's not anything special. 1 bedroom, noisy neighbors, carpet that smells faintly like mildew. But it's mine. I have 4 walls, a front door that locks, and a bed that I don't have to fold up or hide behind a curtain. Honestly, I don't miss the road, not anymore. And every now and again, I think about that night and those kids, that weird laughter, the window exploding over my head. And I remind myself that I thankfully made it out, because some people don't. It was not my plan to become homeless, but it snuck up on me. The same way winter sneaks up on a sick animal. Slow, merciless, and unavoidable. 1 bad month turned into 2. Rent stacked up high. And then suddenly, I was living in a car that was never built to be lived inside. Not one of those vans you see on Instagram with solar panels and teak floors. No. Mine was a 2004 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a sagging headliner, and a heater that only worked if you hit the dashboard just enough. It was shelter though, barely. More of a mobile storage unit than an actual home. It kept the worst of the rain off me, and it didn't draw attention, which really was the main thing. I wasn't looking to be seen, I just wanted to survive. I watched the YouTube videos on stealth camping like they were gospel, how to black out windows, how to find parking lots that didn't tow you, how to keep warm without setting yourself on fire. I learned pretty quickly because, well, I had to. You don't last long on the street if you're careless. So I found a rhythm. Tuck spots behind grocery stores, industrial lots near highway overpasses, back trails inside city greenbelts. You actually get good at reading a place after a while, knowing if it's going to be quiet, safe, and forgotten. That's really the sweet spot, somewhere people don't look, somewhere even the cops don't even bother to check. The city that I ended up in wasn't my home. I wasn't even really that familiar with it, just a place I passed through years ago, and remember it having soft winters. I ended up staying because I had nowhere else to go. I had very few acquaintances. Sure, guys I've met at drop-in centers, people who knew where to get socks or free coffee, but mostly I was on my own. I didn't talk to my family, and I'm not going to explain the story. Every day was the same: scout, scavenge, and survive. Randomly one day, a stranger handed me a hammock. He just walked by, smiled, and said, "Looks like you could use this a lot more than me." And then just kept going. It was cheap and sun-faded, smelled like weed, but it changed everything for me. For the first time in months, I had the chance to sleep off the ground. And for a few hours, it felt like life was turning around for me. The hammock was really a game changer. You wouldn't think of something so simple could actually mean so much, but when you've been curling up in a front seat of a Civic with your knees in your chest and a damp hoodie for a blanket, anything that gets you horizontal feels like a luxury. I carried around for a day or two, trying to find the right spot for it. You don't just hang something like that anywhere. You need trees and privacy, somewhere far off the way, somewhere where nobody goes after dark. There was this one spot I really liked, a green belt behind a Lowe's on the east side of town. On paper, it didn't look like much, but if you followed the chain link fence down past the retention pond, there was a little break in brush that led you to this forgotten strip of woods. No signs or cameras, no footpaths, just overgrown grass and a few sycamores. And the best thing, the silence. It was invisible unless you knew exactly where you were going to look. So on that night, I strung that hammock between two trees that were perfectly spaced for it. The straps tightened snug, just like I'd seen in the videos. I stuffed my blanket and pillows into a plastic tote bag that I'd been carrying around and tucked them underneath, just in case it rained. I even sprayed the fabric with a dollar store linen mist. It smelled clean, like fresh laundry, like home. When I laid down, that fabric cradled my back, and I swear I almost cried. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a real person again, not a statistic, not a ghost, just a guy with a place to sleep. The sky above me was dark and clear, and for once, I didn't sleep with my hand gripping the blade or an ears tuned to every sound in the dark. I don't know what time it was when I heard the siren hit. One second I'm drifting and dreaming, nothing specific, just floating. The next, the world split open with the most brutal high-pitched wail I've ever heard. It wasn't a fire truck and it wasn't a police cruiser. This was different, closer and sharper. It was so loud that it vibrated my teeth. I jerked awake and sat up way too fast. My foot got tangled in the side of the hammock and I flipped, landing hard on the uneven ground below. Something in my lower back just gave out immediately. Almost like a flashbulb went off in my spine. My whole body locked up, and I screamed, loud, raw, and instinctive. Next, I tried moving to crawl, but every inch sent bolts of white-hot pain through my neck. I was stuck, flat on my side with my mouth open, gasping out like a fish. And that's when I heard the growling, not one dog, not two, but a whole pack. It sounded distant at first, somewhere far off in the brush, and then I heard snapping branches, pounding feet, the way their barks punched straight into the night like gunfire. They were running, full speed right toward me, and that siren had likely spooked them too. I couldn't get up, I couldn't even roll. I could only turn my head as they broke through the trees and came into view. dark shapes with flashing teeth and eyes like glass. I think there were at least 4 of them, maybe 5, all mutts and mangy, wild. One of them looked like a pit bull mix. Another was lanky with a caved-in ribcage, eyes bulging out of its head. The others were just mutts of unknown origin, scabbed up, foaming, and lean from hunger. They all stopped for half a second when they saw me, like they weren't sure what they were looking at. Then one barked, this demonic sound, and it was like a trigger. They all lunged. I screamed loudly and desperate, kicking and thrashing, trying to punch, but I couldn't move right. My back was fully locked up, and I was still tangled up in that stupid hammock strap. The first one bit my ankle, teeth sank straight through. It shook its head like it was trying to tear the muscle clean off. Another one leapt for my torso and got a mouthful of my side, sinking teeth through my shirt and into my ribs. Another went for my arm and latched onto my wrist. I felt teeth grind against bone and heard the crack inside. I don't know how long it went on for, I just remember the pain, the blood, and the panic. I remember the sounds of ripping fabric, the snarling, the wet slap of skin being pulled back from muscle. I remember trying to scream again and choking on it. One of them bit my hand, full on, and didn't let go. I watched blood spray into the air. I punched at it with my other fist, but it barely even took notice. Then, the worst one. It had gotten behind me and sank its teeth into the back of my neck, and then pulled. I felt something rip, not just skin, but something deeper. I thought I was dying, and honestly, I wanted to die. And then, out of nowhere, I heard another voice. Hey! Hey, get the hell off of him! Flashlight beams, fast footsteps, a man or two crashing through the brush, shouting and throwing something heavy. The dogs then turned and one growled, not wanting to give up. Another barked and bolted. Then just like that, they were gone, running back into the dark as fast as they'd come out. I was left there lying in the dirt, covered in blood and barely even breathing. I couldn't even see right. My left eye was beginning to swell shut, and I could not move my right hand. My leg was raw and burning, and I remember a man crouching down to me, shining his light right across my face, yelling for somebody to call 911. He asked me my name, but I didn't answer. I just kept whispering, "Don't let them come back. Don't let them come back." I think they found me by pure luck. The guy who had called the cops had been walking his dog on the other side of the greenbelt when he heard me screaming. Said he almost didn't come looking, thought it was maybe kids messing around or somebody just yelling at a train. But something about it didn't sit right with him, so he followed the noise, flashlight in hand. And thank God he did. By the time the EMTs got there, I was going into shock. They loaded me up fast, and I remember the sting of cold metal under my back and the slam of doors and the sirens that followed. I passed out before we reached the hospital, and when I woke up, I was hooked up to all kinds of machines and tubes, wrapped in bandages and barely able to move. I'd lost 2 fingers, one from the hand the dog had clamped down on, another from the wrist that got mangled up. My back was sprained, my ribs were cracked, flesh torn clean from the bone in 3 different places. The surgeon said if they'd gotten to me 15 minutes later, I would have bled out. The police came and took my statement, asked if I saw where the dogs went, but I didn't. They were gone just as fast as they came. They searched the area, set some traps, but I'm not sure if they found them. There's no collars, obviously, no tags, and no witnesses besides the guy who saved me, and he only saw them for a split second, just shapes in the darkness. I spent nearly 3 weeks in that hospital, and the bill I couldn't afford, of course. But thankfully I didn't have to. That guy, the one who found me, he and his wife started this GoFundMe. They told my story, showed photos, and tons of people donated. A lot of people. Enough that I could walk out of that hospital, not to another night in a Civic, but to a motel room, paid in full for 2 months. I'm not homeless anymore. I got a studio apartment now. It's small, but it's got heat and hot water, and a lock on the door. I don't sleep outside. I don't sleep near the woods, and I don't sleep in silence. I keep a fan running all night long, just to drown out all the noise that I imagine. The teeth, the growling, the sirens. Sometimes I still hear them in my nightmares. That hammock gave me one good night of sleep, but I paid for it with blood. Hey there all. I've been listening to Booze and Booze for around a year now, and I just wanted to say thanks. You've gotten me through a lot of dark and depressing nights. I worked a graveyard shift for a township police department inside Michigan. I'm not gonna say which one, but it's a weird little patch of suburbia tucked up against some serious backcountry. Most nights it's really quiet. That kind of quiet that lets your brain spin out if you don't really have something inside your ears. Your podcast has helped me keep it together more than once, so I figured why not return the favor. I don't really have anything big per se to submit, no serial killers or skinwalkers or underground bunkers full of bones. Just this weird, sad, and disturbing call from a couple of years back, and sometimes I still don't even think it really happened. It started off with a hit and run, mid-sized intersection just outside a residential zone. One of those places where people run lights because they think nobody's watching. This time though, somebody got nailed. A pedestrian slammed by this silver SUV going at least 90 miles per hour. Witnesses said it didn't even slow down, just blew through and disappeared into one of the nearby neighborhoods, like it had somewhere else to be. The victim survived, barely. Busted ribs, broken femur, punctured lung. While fire and EMS worked the scene, we started canvassing. And that's when the night took its first turn, right out toward the canal, where the real horror was waiting for us. About 45 minutes into the canvass, one of our guys spotted what looked like a match parked along the gravel cutout near the canal. A silver SUV, front end damaged, expired plates, nobody else around, but you could tell somebody had been living out there. There was garbage scattered along the tree line, scraps of tarps pinned against trees, a stack of old cat food cans, and what looked like a makeshift fire ring full of bones. Chicken bones, we hoped. Definitely the kind of setup you see in places where the forgotten tend to drift. We rolled up really slowly, 4 units total. No sirens, no spotlights. One of those situations where you didn't want to spook anybody, but also didn't want to get too comfortable. Our dispatcher ran the plates. Nothing stolen. Just a dead registration and no current address. We flanked the vehicle and found a woman in the driver's seat, hunched forward, holding what looked like a cat wrapped up in a towel. She didn't react when we shined our flashlights inside, just blinked slowly, then rolled down the window like she'd been expecting us. We told her to step out of the vehicle, and she said that she couldn't, said her cats would get out. And I remember that line exactly. Her voice was so calm, almost sweet, like she was apologizing for a mess that she couldn't quite clean up. If I open the door, the babies will run away. We didn't see any signs of a weapon, and the SUV was packed tight. Blankets, trash, cat carriers, empty cups, God knows what else. After some back and forth, 2 of us went hands-on. I opened up the driver's side door and asked her again to step out. She smiled and said, "Only if you're gonna marry me." I asked her to clarify. She laughed and reached up and stroked the sleeve of my uniform. We got her to the ground without a fight, but not without discomfort. She kept trying to hold hands with each of us, even asked my partner if he wanted to have babies in the woods. Kept muttering about frequencies and cat angels. It was obviously clear she was deep inside some kind of psychotic episode. We cuffed her, got her in the back of a cruiser, and started processing the scene. And that's when things got worse. Inside the vehicle was a biohazard. Cat litter covered the floor, the seats, the dashboard, like it had been shoveled in. Feces was smeared into the carpet. The smell was unreal, almost chemical. Rotten food everywhere, and The cats, at least 6 of them, 2 alive, barely. The others were not. One was curled in the front passenger floorboard, stiff as stone. Another was decomposing inside a crate wedged behind a seat. Then we found blood, and not a little. A towel was saturated and balled up near the emergency brake, soaked completely through. It looked like it had been used to pack a wound. My partner lifted it and held it away like it might bite him, and I asked her what happened. She smiled through the cruiser window and said, "Oh, there's just a little accident." That's when the puzzle pieces started forming a picture, and none of us really liked what it looked like. We called it in for a follow-up. Homicide, animal control, mental health, everybody. We processed the area as best we could while keeping the perimeter. That camp wasn't just a homeless stop, it was hers. She'd been living out there. We found receipts in the glove box dating back 3 weeks. She'd been parked in that spot nearly that whole time, long enough to hurt somebody and long enough to kill somebody. And as it turned out, she had. The follow-up investigation unraveled fast. She wasn't from the area, hadn't lived anywhere in years. A sister downstate said she'd gone off her meds months and months ago, dropping off the grid, never came back. Her name had popped up in other towns for trespassing, shoplifting, erratic behavior. In one case, she'd been found sleeping in a laundromat bathroom with 3 kittens in her coat. The hit and run that we were investigating wasn't her at first. It turns out she clipped another guy a week prior, and that one didn't survive. We had no idea it was her until we rewatched this traffic cam that showed the same SUV rolling through an intersection, slower that time, but still not stopping. And then, the body. A homeless man, mid-50s, found face down in the brush around 100 yards from her vehicle. No visible trauma, no ID, and it looked like he'd been there for days. She denied even knowing him. She said maybe he walked too close to the vibrations, whatever that meant. Toxicology came back later and said he'd been dead from blunt force trauma, likely from a fall or beating. Could have been her, it could have been coincidence. We'll never really know. She was charged with multiple counts: vehicular homicide, animal cruelty, failure to report a crime. But she didn't go straight to prison. She was evaluated, medicated, stabilized. She got a deal that let her serve time in a facility equipped to treat her. I still occasionally will think about that night, about those cats, about that smell, the blood. But mostly, I think about how many people like her are still out there, off the grid and waiting to snap.